You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, August 4th. We'll be doing a show with Weston back next week, but today it's just me. You're stuck with me, but I'm going to be giving a quick little recap of today's practice. It was the first of another block of practices, and this is the same block of practices in which they'll be having joint practice with the Denver Broncos on Thursday. So this was kind of a lead up into that and bit of a warm up. The one concern I think I have, a lot of us have, are some of these injuries that are beginning to pile up. So let's just actually dive into that, because I feel like that's a bit of a precursor to some of the other topics that we're going to discuss a little bit next. So running back Isaac Guerendo, who left Saturday's practice with a shoulder injury. Kyle Shanahan spoke with the media today and said that injury will keep him out a few weeks. This is a blow to Guerendo, dude. Like, I just feel like Guerendo has been dealing with a lot of injuries so far throughout his short NFL career already, and it's just hard to find consistency as a player, I think, when you're constantly in and out of the lineup and on the field. So kind of feel like that's how it is for Guerendo. When I did mention earlier that Guerendo didn't practice today, I saw someone comment on Twitter that he's like Elijah Mitchell 2.0. I hate that. It does kind of feel that way. The one bit of solace that I have with this injury from Guerendo is that it's not a lower extremity injury, which is kind of what he's dealt with in the past. Hammy, like a lot of leg injuries in the past for Guerendo. This one's his shoulder, but yeah, I mean, it still doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that he could stay healthy, right? So again, shoulder injury for Guerendo will keep him out a few weeks. Then you had fullback Kyle Juszczyk on Saturday's practice. He also left Saturday's practice, so he got his heel stepped on, according to Kyle Shanahan. It's a bit sore, so he's day to day. And then Christian McCaffrey didn't practice today, but he's fine. It was just a rest day for him. So that meant the only healthy running backs that were available for the 49ers today were Jordan James, who, by the way, Jordan James returned to practice today after missing the last couple of practices. So he's back. That's good. Jordan James, Patrick Taylor Jr., Corey Kiner, and Amir Abdullah, who the 49ers signed just last week as well. So 4 healthy running backs, and they got a lot of work today in team period. And the one worry that I have about these running backs getting all these reps is that, are they opening themselves up to an injury by having so many reps at this point, as they're, still kind of ramping up? That's kind of the concern that Kyle Shanahan had early in training camp that he's mentioned with the wide receivers. So could we be facing something similar with the running backs? Well, I would assume that Christian McCaffrey is going to be back out there tomorrow. So really it was just one day where these 4 really had to kind of carry the load. But now with McCaffrey presumably back for Tuesday's practice, that should help, lessen the stress for all the other guys and spread the love out for for all the opportunities. But yeah, blow for Guerendo for sure. Hopefully he can come back and look like it's his old self, because it was looking like he was putting together a pretty good camp. He was looking more comfortable out there. So yeah, hopefully he could come back and just pick up right where he left off. But that's the situation for the running backs. Jair Brown, 49ers safety, his ankle apparently is bugging him, according to Kyle Shanahan. So he could return later this week. And from what I saw today, it was Jason Pinnock as the safety who's been starting at safety. And then the other safety that was starting was Richie Grant. So those 2 guys were getting the start today with Jair Brown out. Speaking of injuries that are, bugging a player, that's something that Juwan Jennings was saying with his calf. That's why he's been missing from practice for however long it's been at this point. Feels like at least a week for Juwan Jennings. Kyle Shanahan was asked if this is contract related, to which Kyle said you'd have to ask Juwan that. But he said it was his calf, and he said it's also showing his calf, which by that I think he just means like when they probably did some testing, his calf is showing, I don't know, some injury. So it seems like it's not contract related. I didn't seem to assume that. I know everyone kind of went to that because of, the contract negotiations that they're probably having. But he showed up to training camp to begin with. I would just find it odd that out of nowhere he would then decide to stop participating after, participating the first week. So for Juwan Jennings, it doesn't seem like there's a timetable for him to return yet either, which that's not great, and that could only hurt his contract negotiations. So that's a bummer for Juwan Jennings. Defensive tackle Evan Anderson has a knee bruise, and he will be day-to-day. Defensive end Sam Okwenonu is dealing with a groin injury, and he's expected to be out a couple of weeks. Defensive tackle Kevin Givens, who's missed the last couple practices, apparently he suffered a pec injury, and he's had a pec injury before. He's expected to be out a while and probably go into the season. Like, that's going to be a longer term injury for Kevin Givens. Not sure the definitive timeline, but yeah, that's going to be an injury that goes into the season according to Kyle. So that's a blow for Kevin Givens and the defensive tackle depth, especially because, as I mentioned, Evan Anderson dealing with a knee bruise right now. But when he's back, like I said, Anderson is day to day. When he's back, like, he's definitely going to be in the mix. A couple of other misses from today's practice, guys who didn't practice today. Nick Bosa, who also missed Saturday, but today was just a routine rest day for Nick Bosa, so he basically just got an extra rest day, which is great for him because the reason he missed Saturday didn't seem to be too serious to begin with. He was just dealing with some soreness. And Trent Williams also got a rest day today with Spencer Burford, who lined up at left tackle with the first team. Couple players who were back after having missed some practices. Jordan James, like I said, he was back. Dalmador Lenore was back today. That was great to see. And Colton McKivitz also back in today's practice. Now, the reason that I wanted to start with the injuries first is because I think it's important. It lays the groundwork. It lays out the context for what I'm about to say next. The 49ers signed a plethora of players today, as they announced today. So defensive end Bradley Benet, offensive tackle Isaiah Prince, cornerback Fabian Moreau, and safety Jalen Mahoney. They re-signed Mahoney. They released him sometime last week, but now he's back. So they signed a number of different players, and I think a lot of that has to do with the injuries that they have right now. And then they also, of course, had to make room for these players. So they released kicker Greg Joseph, tight end Mason Pline, quarterback Tanner Mordecai, and wide receiver Isaiah Nair. Couple of surprises here. Well, let's talk about Tanner Mordecai first. There's way more to unpack with the Greg Joseph one, so let me peel back this onion slowly. So Tanner Mordecai seemed like he was kind of losing some favor in the quarterback room already. He was not having a strong camp by any means. He was consistently turning the ball over. In fact, because he's a third-string quarterback, a lot of practices would end on his plays, his last throws, right? And oftentimes it was a turnover for Tanner Mordecai. So when they brought in Carter Bradley, who is 49ers assistant coach, Gus Bradley's son. When they brought him in for it wasn't even a trial. Like he was the quarterback who was throwing to the players that they were trying out or working out, but they liked him so much in that workout that wasn't even for him, I don't think, and they ended up signing him. And since then, like they've been hearing nothing but good things about him. Remember, I didn't get to attend last block of practices, but I was hearing the beat writers say good things about him and how he was doing. Today was my first time seeing Carter Bradley in practice. And I have to say, like, I see the vision. I mean, he's a third string quarterback, but just based on today solely, I saw way more to be encouraged with from Carter Bradley than I saw in as many practices Tanner Mordecai, right? So, yeah, I can see why they like Bradley. He made a couple of impressive throws today. Seems to, be comfortable so far out there, which is impressive because he just joined, right? Sometimes it takes guys some time to get acclimated, but he seems to be fitting right in. Isaiah Nair, another surprise from the list of cuts, especially because like the 49ers are kind of dealing with some injuries at wide receiver, right? You don't have Ayuk. You don't have Juwan Jennings out there. Cowan is still missing time. And we've heard some good things about Nair and just like the intrigue of him, right? Like, George Kittle talked about how he can, get this many yards and this many steps, and he's fast, he's big. Like, you definitely see the side. Like, he's the prototypical wide receiver size. So that's intriguing about Nair, but wasn't really stringing together anything special in practice. He did have the one of the plays of camp, right, with the one catch that he had, and it was reaching over a couple of defenders. But aside from that, it was pretty quiet for Nair, and I don't know, like I still think there's a possibility that Nair does get re-signed at some point, just like we saw them do with Jalen Mahoney, who's now back on the squad. So we'll see if he clears waivers. I believe he's subject to them. So if he clears, I think the 49ers would like to bring him back. And, he's probably still a candidate for the practice squad if that does happen. But that's it. I'd also say the same for Mason Pline. But we'll see. I feel like a lot of these moves, again, they had to make these moves to make room for the guys because of the injuries. And so that kind of explains also this big one that a lot of us were surprised about. Greg Joseph, who was brought in to compete with Jake Moody. And this is a very serious competition because we don't want to go into the season feeling like the 49ers, well, I imagine the 49ers don't want to go into the season feeling like they have to roll with Jake Moody, seeing as how Jake Moody is, the way he looked last year wasn't very confidence building for the rest of us. So Greg Joseph was brought in. They've had a pretty good competition so far. What was the total for those guys? It was like 21 to 24 for Moody, I think, and 22 to 24 for Greg Joseph. So Greg Joseph had the slight edge on the kicking competition if we're only counting field goals, right? But I had been saying so far in camp that, like, I didn't feel like any of them really won it or that either of them really lost the job to this point. Like, I definitely feel like I needed to see more from both of those guys. And maybe once we got to the preseason, it would change a little bit. We'd gain a little more clarity. But Kyle Shanahan did provide some context as to why they decided to make this move. I'm going to play the clip for you right here. Oh, shoot.
Explain that. More just the roster numbers. I would have loved to keep them longer, allow them to play that out longer. But just, we had 13 guys out of practice today. We got 5 guys on PUP. It's just too many people to have that luxury. It's awesome to have 2 kickers, allow them to battle, but they're not guys to really take reps. We need more people to take reps for us.
What do you consider the competition final then?
I mean, it's not here, but there's never whether you have 1 kicker in the building or 2, which you rarely have 2, kickers always know they're competing with whoever's out there. So I don't see it much different.
All right, so that was Kyle Shanahan talking about cutting Greg Joseph and whether or not this means that the kicker competition is over. I mean, based on what he said, like I would have to say that it doesn't sound like the competition is really over. In fact, it sounded like they would have loved to keep Greg Joseph around a little bit more, just again to kind of gain that clarity and call it over. But it also felt like just with all the injuries that they have right now, they were stuck between a rock and a hard place and kind of forced to, make some room, and Greg Joseph being a result of that. And to kind of like put that into perspective a little bit more, the kickers, and this is going to sound a little ridiculous, but the kickers don't even kick every single practice. Like they don't kick field goals every practice. Like Jake Moody didn't kick any field goals in today's practice that I saw. He didn't kick any. There were maybe some kickoffs that he might have done, but like no field goals were kicked by Moody today. So, and that was a regular occurrence in these camp practices so far. They'd have like their moment to have their back and forth competition after team period for one practice. Then the following day, they wouldn't do anything. Like we would not see the kickers do anything. Like full stop. So to Kyle's point, it kind of does reiterate that, hey, like these guys are kind of just standing there. We don't necessarily need two kickers right now. We need to make room for some of these other positions that are hurting right now. Greg Joseph needs to go right now. So, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily over. And I think also once we get into the preseason games, like it's still going to be up to Jake Moody to make those kicks. Like he's not out of the water yet, in my opinion. Like I think Jake Moody still has some to prove, and yeah, they could bring in another kicker at any point. They could even bring Greg Joseph back, at any point. So I don't think the competition is necessarily over. Again, if it was, I'd be very surprised because I hadn't seen anything to this point that told me that Moody won it outright. Like the competition was just too close. They were missing around the same number of kicks, and Moody, in fact, missed one more than Joseph to this point. So I don't know. The only thing that would make me think that Moody won it outright would be if Moody was just that much better in kickoffs. Because I do think that could be like the tiebreaker, right? Like if they were both so close and one of them is better at kickoffs, then that could maybe put Moody over the edge. That's the only thing I can think of if the competition ended today. But yeah, I'm not sold that it's done just because they cut Greg Joseph, just because they had to make room for other guys that are injured. But yeah, just going to leave that there. But we'll see how it plays out with the kicker position going forward. Let's get to other positions that matter a little bit more. So I'll just talk about the one-on-one standouts from today. Ricky Pearsall, and this, a lot of people had brought up the fact Ricky Pearsall has not participated in any one-on-ones. He finally did today, and he looked great out there. By my count, he won all of his one-on-one matchups that I saw. And I was focusing mostly on the wide receivers and the corners today in one-on-ones because the defensive line, offensive line was a little further out of my view, a little further than it usually is. So I didn't really get to see that much as I would have liked. But from what I did see, the Drew Moss had some impressive wins. Austin Pleasance had a couple of nice wins. Sebastian Valdez, the UDFA defensive lineman, looks good. And I forget which coach it was that was talking about, was it Pooney that said they call Valdez the Hulk because he's just so kind of built big, I guess. So Valdez is impressing right now as far as a UDFA defensive lineman that's had similar success. Like, it kind of reminds me of the Evan Anderson hype, right? Like, he could surprise people. So look out for Valdez in these preseason games because he's looked good in one-on-ones. But Ricky Pearsall, like I said, looked great in the one-on-one matchups. Then you had Russell Gage and Demarcus Robinson, and those three receivers are the 49ers' top three receivers right now with all the other injuries. So those are the guys that stood out that just seemed to be the most reliable, that find a way to get open, find a way to get that edge, even when the coverage is sticky, just the way they could, like, at the last moment position their body to gain that little bit of separation or, just gain that leverage against the corner. Yeah, I see those things against them, I see those things with those guys in one-on-ones going up against these corners, which I think is great. Like, that shows a lot of savvy. I think you have to have that when you're a wide receiver, especially like when it comes to those very close matchups like that. You have to be able to create an edge for yourself at the last moment sometimes. So I'm seeing that from Pearsall, Gage, and Robinson. I think the quarterbacks are becoming very comfortable throwing to those guys. And yeah, I think it was Mac Jones throwing to the receivers in the one-on-one matchup. So yeah, they've been looking good so far. As far as team period goes and the standouts there, Ricky Pearsall, once again, like, he looks so good. Like, he looks like the top receiver out there right now. And as he should. Like, I would really hope that he would be. I think as I've said before, the work that he's done with Ricky Pearsall the work that he's done with Brock Purdy this offseason is pretty evident. Like, it seems to be coming together for both of them very well. But it's not even just that. Like, he's had some nice plays with Mac Jones too. And so he's just getting open. He's getting open consistently in team period, one-on-ones. Like, he's standing out that way, and I love to see that from Ricky. It's really encouraging. Can't wait to see what he looks like against the Broncos corners, because that'll definitely be a test. There were a couple of times where Pearsall was lined up against Lenore, and I was like paying attention to that. There were a number of times Pearsall was lined up against Upton Stout, and I loved the hell out of that because you guys know how much I love Upton Stout, and I wanted to see how he did. It really just felt like an iron sharpens iron moment. You remember Stout had the pass breakup against Pearsall some practices ago. I think it was like sometime last week. That was a nice play from Stout, and so seeing Stout be able to go up against Pearsall was exciting to me. And I would say for the most part, like, Pearsall had the edge over Stout, but what stood out about Stout is just the physicality that he plays with. You can see, like, he's really up for any challenge, and I love that. It never feels like he gets burnt, like he plays sticky coverage. Again, like, just what I saw from Pearsall was just that ability to create that separation when it counted most, like when he needed to, right? Which receiver needs to have. And then Stout also, like, you kind of see at the catch point, like, he has the ability to recover towards the end and, try to get his hands in there and make it as challenging of a catch as he can for the receiver. And he did today. At one point, there was a catch that probably Pearsall should have had it. It probably could be counted as a drop from Pearsall, but the way that Stout played it, like, he was just so physical, he made it more difficult for Pearsall to get that one. I think if Stout wasn't playing as physical on that one, that Pearsall would have just caught it. But I think that extra bit, of physicality just kind of made Pearsall overthink it a little bit, maybe, and I don't know, but I thought it was great coverage from Stout. And again, Pearsall had the edge over Stout, but I love to see those guys match up. I want to see more of that. throughout camp. I really feel like Stout's coming along really well. He talked to the media after practice, talked about, watching K'Wan Williams tape and reaching out to him. And I love to hear that too. Like, I love guys who just want to soak up game. And Stout definitely feels like one of those guys. Kyle Shanahan even said that, he just kind of gets it. And I think that's really encouraging too, to hear from a rookie. And, the fact that he gets it and he seems to be, just a football guy that, understands football. I think that's helping him out in this case. And yeah, that's why Kyle said he's kind of beating out a lot of guys to this point and why he's getting the opportunities that he is. So this was just the beginning for Stout, and put that into perspective. I think that's really encouraging. So looking good on run stops as well. I've already mentioned how, he always comes through in the run game, always has a nose for the football. And yeah, love to see the iron sharpens iron reps from him. Another guy that's standing out in team period and continues to, George Kittle, man. And you can't say enough about him, but he just continues to make plays in practice. He looks great. He looks as fresh as I think I've ever seen him at this point in camp. He looks healthy. He looks spry. I love that word, but that's really what Kittle looks like. He looks well rested. I'll say that. He looks well rested and ready to go. And I think he's going to eat this season. I think Purdy's going to feed him. Purdy loves throwing the ball to him in camp so far. And look, he still doesn't have Ayuk. He still doesn't have Jennings. He didn't have CMC today. I get it. But I think Kittle, regardless, he's going to get a lot of targets, as he should. And he looks good with the ball in his hands as well. So really excited for Purdy and Kittle this season. I'm stocking up on Kittle stocks in fantasy leagues this year. I think it's going to pay some dividends for sure. But yeah, as far as, team periods, those were the guys that, really kind of stood out. And I'll also say the newcomer that they signed, the defensive end Bradley Anae, had a number of would-be sacks. In fact, he ended practice with 3 different would-be sacks against Isaac Alarcon. So we got to take that into consideration too. Alarcon has been getting cooked most of camp, but I mean, the speed from Anae really jumps off. He was winning off the edge with speed over and over again. And I want to say I saw it in one-on-ones too, but yes, definitely did see in one-on-ones. Just saw my note. But yeah, something to keep an eye on. I just want to see him do it against someone other than Alarcon, because I think at this point I'm convinced anyone on the team could maybe win against him. But yeah, they did some move the ball period in team period today, and it felt like all the offenses moved the ball pretty well. Purdy, Mac, and Bradley, they advanced the ball. So I think Purdy had a touchdown to Patrick Taylor, who was wide open on the right side of the end zone. And that was before move the ball period. Then there was Carter Bradley. So Carter Bradley throws with a nice zip too. And there was a touchdown, I believe, to Jordan Watkins from him. And that one was a pretty tight window, if I recall. So there were a couple of nice tight window throws in today's practice, I think, from Mac as well. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Bergen. I feel like he's getting some nice involvement. And again, the fact that there's a number of guys that are hurt right now, he's getting second team reps, but he's building some good chemistry with Mac Jones. So I like what I see, and I like how they're using him. He had a tunnel screen play today that I'm okay, yeah, he's got some speed. Definitely feels like the type of role he could work in. Yeah. So the offense, I would say like unit of the day, probably the offense. They were moving the ball pretty well. Not having Nick Bosa there definitely helps. Nick Bosa has been wrecking stuff all camp, so I think anytime he's not there, the offense can actually move the ball a little bit better. But I can't wait to see what the team looks like on Thursday, playing against or scrimmaging against another team. Like I think that will be the real test because like everyone is worried about the offensive line must be bad, the tackles must be bad if Nick Bosa is winning over and over. I think the real test is going to be like will Nick Bosa have success against the Broncos offensive line? If he does, I'll feel more confident saying that I think it's just Nick Bosa is that good, and he is. But like we know that already, so I don't know why people are freaking out. But it does feel like one of those years for Nick Bosa. Let me get to a couple questions here. How's Michael on pass rush? I definitely think he's most comfortable rushing from the inside, and the 49ers kind of have him doing both, like rushing from the outside and the inside. And I think where he's had the most success so far is from the inside. And so I think that's going to be a popular spot for him this year. And that makes sense because you can keep him on the field when Bosa and Huff are out there. So I think we see that this year. One thing I'll say, I don't know if I want to say critical of Alfred Collins, but I have pointed out that he's been disappointing to me so far. What I will say is that I think he's slowly getting into his groove. I think it's important that people are patient with him and realistic about where he's at and where he came in when he started training camp. He did not play in the spring at all. He didn't do OTAs. He didn't do mini camp. Like he's going into training camp like raw basically. And I just saw what people were saying about him, calling him a bust already. Like relax, right? Like let's give him a chance to acclimate and get comfortable and see if he can improve in training camp. Like this is his on ramp. So I think with more practice he'll get more comfortable. We need to see some of those improvements, and I think we are. And then like he's more of a run stuffer anyway. Like he's a big body. He's gonna absorb double teams. He could shed blocks when he's going after running backs and things like that. Like those are the things that jumped off in his college tape. That's what he's going to be doing. So yeah, I think he'll be fine. Like as long as we continue to see some improvements from him. Let me get to some of these other comments. I don't know if my internet is slow, but it's kind of slow. Love all says Upton Stout is looking good. Apparently, him and CJ are the impressive rooks from all accounts. Yes, they are. I mean, they definitely look the part. And Michael, like I definitely include Michael in there. But yeah, those are Stout. Like I said, him getting first team reps as early as he was, literally the second day of practice. I don't think we've seen anyone else as the starting. Well, not starting nickel corner, but the first team nickel corner. So that says a lot about him. And not only has he earned those reps, he really doesn't seem like he's looked back at all. The 49ers haven't looked back at all. That's important. CJ West, yeah. Like I think CJ West tends to look best in one-on-ones. I think that really accentuates his skill set most. In team period, like you get mixed results. Depending on who he's going up against. Like Drew Moss, for example, has some good reps against him. He also has some losses against him. So, but West overall has been great. And yes, like he's definitely one of the rookies to be most excited about just based on what he's done in camp so far. And with all the injuries that I mentioned to start the show, like Evan Anderson, Kevin Givens, like that's more of an opportunity for CJ West to potentially like get some starts under his belt pretty early in the year. So that's important for him too. Yes, Vincent, I have been at camp. I missed block 3. They didn't allow block 3 any fans in block 3, like, so the practice from Thursday, Friday, Saturday I didn't attend because the Morgan Wallen concert, I guess they weren't allowing fans, but I was back there today, so that's why I got this update for you. Rob D says, I can see CJ West becoming a real culture piece in the organization. Absolutely. Filthy Casual asked, do the 49ers have a capable backup to Kittle? He always misses a couple of games a season. Good question. I mean, they have Luke Farrell, but Luke Farrell is more of the blocking tight end. Like, I think I've only seen Farrell catch one pass in team period. I do think Braden Willis has caught more passes. I've also seen Ross Dwelly, catching passes, but not sure, Filthy, if you're going to get the type of, TE2 tandem or like the type of production that, you see other teams get out of their tight end twos. Like, that's just, I think I've learned to accept that that's just what the 49ers are not going to have that, for whatever reason. And maybe it's because the difference between Kittle and anyone else is just so stark, which is fair. But yeah, also, I just don't think they're as invested in having a threat at TE2 as, maybe us fans would like them to be. Yeah, Luke Farrell, definitely more of the blocking tight end. But, yeah, Dwelly can still catch. Let's see here. Michael is like the new Armstead, being able to move inside or outside. Yeah, it definitely feels like it as far as just the flexibility that you can have with him. But yeah, I think to start, he'll probably be more on the inside, and then he'll improve on the outside. I think just got to work on some of those counters and working against tackles a little bit more. But that'll come to him. I think he'll soak up some game from Bosa and Huff. Joel, did you catch my note on Collins? I just finished speaking about him. Collins is, for the most part, if we're just looking at the entirety of training camp, has been disappointing. But I was mentioning, like, we got to remember he didn't play in the spring, no OTAs, no rookie mini camp. So training camps has really been the start of his action at all. I think it's important that we give him some time to stack his days and just build the foundation first. And the last couple of practices, like, I know the beat writers were mentioning that he was starting to do that in block 3. So, yeah, I'm going to continue to give him some patience, I think, a little bit. Didn't really notice Siegel a whole lot. Watkins has been looking pretty good. He seems to be pretty comfortable and also a pretty common target, I think, for like the second team, third team. So yeah, Watkins been fine. I think he has a shot to make this roster. I did see the rival jerseys. I think it really, I'm not going to say much. I think it just depends on, what you as a fan like. Some people are going to hate them. Some people are going to love them. I'll just say that. I guess you can say that about any jersey, but some more than others. Yeah, the surprise of Nair, I think, I think it's just more so the injuries of other positions kind of force their hand to make some room elsewhere. And I also think, some of the other wide receivers that, have become consistent targets, like Robinson, obviously, like Russell Gage, even Watkins and Bergen were becoming more common targets than I ever saw from Isaiah Nair. So I think that's important. Gomez asks, do you think the 49ers will make the playoffs this year? I think they have a shot to be a wild card team, in all seriousness. They have an easy schedule. I think they'll start the season off pretty slow. And I think as the season goes on, they're going to build some momentum. Some of these rookies are going to come along and really start to turn things around once they figure it out. So I think they'll sneak in as a wild card team. I think they have a chance to be like exciting and fun to watch this year for different reasons than they've been in the past. So I'm looking forward to it. Oh, you're good, Joel. You are all good. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people wondering about Collins, and probably because they haven't, like, for the most part, hadn't really heard too much about Collins, but I think there was a reason for that. All right. Filthy asks, if Jimmy G is the Lambs' starting quarterback, you think the Niners are winning the West? Yeah, I'd probably say so. I mean, if Jimmy G like starts any significant time for the Rams, he'll have some success. Like, I think McVay's a great coach. I think within certain parameters and talent around him, like, we've seen it, Jimmy could be successful. But Jimmy can't help himself. He's going to throw interceptions. He's going to throw hospital balls. It'll only be a matter of time before Puka goes down with an injury because of a Jimmy G hospital ball. Like, we know. So that, yeah, I think I'd feel pretty good about the 49ers winning the West if Jimmy G has to start multiple games. Yeah. All right, guys, that's my recap for the day. Tomorrow we've got Bully Ball, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel so you can check it out on my YouTube. Follow Gold Standard Network as well. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. Appreciate you guys. All right, I'll talk to you later. Have a good rest of your Monday.